Was P. Diddy involved in Tupac murder? Welcome to Fact Check, and if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. In the 50-year history of hip-hop, there have never been two stars whose lives, and deaths, have been more examined than Tupac Shakur and Christopher Wallace, the rapper known professionally as the Notorious B.I.G. or Biggie Smalls. Both men are as beloved and missed now as they were almost 30 years ago when they were killed, Shakur in September 1996 in Las Vegas and Wallace in March 1997 in Los Angeles. The murders of the two influential rappers who started as friends and later became rivals have always been culturally connected, because of both the time period and the circumstances. Both men came from impoverished backgrounds, were raised by single mothers whom they cherished and honored via the music that made them famous. Each had run-ins with the law earlier in their lives before being heralded as artistic superstars who were untouchable when it came to their craft. The pair were also at the center of the East Coast versus West Coast rap beef in the 1990s after Shakur, a West Coast-based artist, became convinced that Wallace, who was from Brooklyn, helped set him up to be shot 5 times in a Manhattan recording studio in 1994. Wallace denied any involvement and was never charged in connection to the crime. Ultimately, both were victims of fatal drive-by shootings while out with others for a night of partying. There is even a connection between the investigations into their deaths. Before Shakur was shot in 1994, he and Wallace were friends and performed on stage together. It was an intense, personal and beautiful friendship. Before we start, it's important to dig back to the story of the Tupac and Biggie Smalls, Christopher Wallace, relationship. The duo first met in 1992 when Diddy arranged to meet with Biggie after seeing his feature in the Source magazine's unsigned hype column. Born in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City as Lesane Parish Crooks, Tupac's single mother moved the family often in an attempt to escape the high-crime areas. They first went to Baltimore and then to Marin City, California. It was there that Tupac's love and talent for poetry was bred. He eventually broke into the music business, first as a roadie and dancer for the group Digital Underground. He took the mic in 1991, with his debut album, Tupacalypse Now, released that year. Tupac entered the music scene 2 years before Biggie. Born in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City as Lesane Parish Crooks, Tupac's single mother moved the family often in an attempt to escape the high-crime areas. They first went to Baltimore and then to Marin City, California. It was there that Tupac's love and talent for poetry was bred. He eventually broke into the music business, first as a roadie and dancer for the group Digital Underground. He took the mic in 1991, with his debut album, Tupacalypse Now, released that year. Meanwhile, back in New York City, Christopher "Biggie" Wallace was raised in Brooklyn, spent his teen years attending prestigious high schools, where English was a strong subject, dealing drugs in the streets and rapping for fun. "It was fun just hearing myself on tape over beats," he said in his biography for Arista Records. But a demo he made found its way to Source magazine, which spotlighted the young talent, and he was soon represented by Sean "Diddy" Combs, also known as Puffy Daddy. His first single, Party and Bulls **T, came out in 1993. Meanwhile, back in New York City, Christopher "Biggie" Wallace was raised in Brooklyn, spent his teen years attending prestigious high schools, where English was a strong subject, dealing drugs in the streets and rapping for fun. "It was fun just hearing myself on tape over beats," he said in his biography for Arista Records. But a demo he made found its way to Source magazine, which spotlighted the young talent, and he was soon represented by Sean "Diddy" Combs, also known as Puffy Daddy. His first single, Party and Bulls **T, came out in 1993. Biggie asked Tupac to be his manager. By that year, Tupac was already a platinum-selling artist, so Biggie asked a drug dealer to introduce him to Tupac at a Los Angeles party, according to a Vice excerpt of the book Original Gangstas, The Untold Story of Dr. Dre, Eazy-E, Ice Cube, Tupac Shakur, and the Birth of West Coast Rap by Ben Westhoff. Pac walks into the kitchen and starts cooking for us. He's in the kitchen cooking some steaks, an intern named Dan Smalls who worked with Biggie recalled of the meeting. "We were drinking and smoking and all of a sudden, Pac was like, 'Yo, come get it.' And we go into the kitchen and he had steaks, and French fries, and bread, and Kool-Aid and we just sittin' there eating and drinking and laughing. That's truly where Big and Pac's friendship started. There was mutual respect between the two, as well as their friend groups." According to the Vice excerpt, Idi Amin, a friend of Biggie's, said, "We all thought he was a dope rapper." The story reports that Tupac gave Biggie a Hennessy bottle as a gift. Biggie would crash on Tupac's couch when he was in California and Tupac would always stop by Biggie's neighborhood when he was in New York. In essence, they were like any other pair of friends. And the potential greatness of their combined talents was also evident. At the 1993 Budweiser Superfest at New York City's Madison Square Garden, they freestyled together. Biggie often turned to Tupac for advice in the business, and even asked him to manage his career. But Tupac didn't mix business with friendship. "Nah, stay with Puff. He will make you a star." Tupac believed Biggie had a hand in his 1994 gun down. While there were some smaller kerfuffles between Tupac and Biggie, the first big fallout happened when they were scheduled to work on a project together for another rapper, Little Sean. Tupac arrived at Times Square's Quad Recording Studios on November 30, 1994, and was getting ready to head upstairs to where Biggie and Combs were. But instead, Tupac was gunned down in the lobby and shot 5 times, according to the New York Times. He survived the attack but believed Biggie might have something to do with it, even though they did make it upstairs to see them right after the incident. Tupac said the crew looked surprised and guilty, but Puffy claimed they showed him nothing but love and concern, according to the Vice excerpt. When Tupac joined Death Row Records, the East Coast-West Coast rivalry was cemented. While Tupac was incarcerated for another incident, he came to believe Biggie knew about the attack ahead of time. The West Coast rapper reached out to Suge Knight, who offered him a place on his Death Row Records roster. Tupac accepted, cementing the rivalry between Knight's label and Combs' Bad Boy Records. Any artist out there that wanna be an artist, stay a star, and won't have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the videos, all on the records, dancing, come to Death Row. Knight proclaimed at that 1995 Source Awards show. There was never proof that Biggie or Combs knew about the incident. But a couple of months later, Biggie's B-side single was a track called Who Shot Ya, which led to Tupac's response with the song, Hit 'Em Up. In it, Tupac claimed he slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. According to Vibe, Evans denied the claim, saying, "That ain't how I do business." The punches continued to be thrown throughout their short lives, each side blaming the other for the deaths, while other theorists believe they may still be alive. But after Tupac's death, Biggie wanted to put an end to the coast-to-coast fighting. "We two individual people, we waged a coastal beef, one man against one man made a whole West Coast hate a whole East Coast. And vice versa. And that really bugged me out," he said in an interview. "I've got to be the one to try to flip it, because Pac can't be the one to try to squash it because he's gone." It's also important to note that after the 1994 Shakur shooting, Shakur found out that the night of that attack, Wallace and Sean Diddy Combs were together in a recording studio. He openly accused them of knowing about the planned attack, which both vehemently denied. For years, his accusations divided the rap community and fans. East versus West Coasts. Less than 24 hours after the 1994 shooting, Shakur made a court appearance in a wheelchair on sex assault charges against him. A jury sentenced him to more than a year in prison. While he was locked up, Wallace released the 1994 song, Who Shot Ya? Shakur saw the record as a taunt, though Wallace claimed the song was written months before the shooting and not directed toward him. Shakur, who was born in East Harlem, New York, came to represent the West Coast since signing with Los Angeles-based Death Row Records after his prison stint. Wallace and Combs hail from Brooklyn and Harlem, and are represented by New York City-based Bad Boy Records. Malcolm Greenidge, a rapper known as Idi Amin and Shocker's lifelong friend, described the deep rift between labels as rap beef. Reggie Wright Jr., a former security chief at Death Row Records, said the rift escalated when label co-founder Marion Suge Knight made a public statement disrespecting Combs at the 1995 Source Awards held in New York. Later that year, the Dogg Pound and Snoop Dogg released the single New York, angering native New Yorkers who felt disrespected by the West Coast artists filming in their city. The music video showed the rappers kicking over a New York skyscraper. The following year, Shakur released the aggressive single, Hit 'Em Up, which took aim at Wallace and bragged about sleeping with his wife, the singer Faith Evans. It's still one of the top 3 most diss songs talked about in the hip-hop community as far as rap labels and disrespect to another label and their family members goes, Wright said. The hostility continued backstage at the 1996 Soul Train Awards in Los Angeles because Wallace was chosen over Shakur to open the show, Wright said. 1996 shooting in Las Vegas. On September 7, 1996, Shakur, his associates, and their rivals watched Mike Tyson knock out Bruce Seldon in a championship fight at the MGM Grand Casino. That night, Shakur learned that Anderson was involved in a robbery attempt targeting his record label. With his entourage, the rapper darted toward Anderson and threw a punch in retaliation, which ignited the brawl. After the casino fight, Shakur and Knight started to make their way to a nearby nightclub in a black BMW. They led a convoy of about 10 cars that included friends, bodyguards and death row artists on the glitzy Las Vegas Strip, a brightly lit area bustling with casinos, storefronts and tourists. Authorities have said a white Cadillac with 4 men inside pulled alongside the BMW on a quieter street off the Strip. One person from the Cadillac opened fire, riddling the passenger side of Knight's car with bullets, police said. Sitting in the passenger seat, Shakur was shot multiple times, at least twice in the chest. Knight was grazed by a bullet fragment or shrapnel. Greenidge, who described the rapper as a professional mentor, told the grand jury he was in the convoy. He said he ran to Shocker's side after the shooting and police told him to lie on the asphalt. He recalled Shakur telling him, "Get on the ground, they're going to shoot you." Police found the BMW with blood spilled on the seats and nearly 10 bullet strikes on the right side of the car, according to testimony from Daniel Ford, a retired Las Vegas police officer who responded to the shooting. Ford said police tried but couldn't find evidence of fingerprints on the 7 cartridge cases found at the scene. Dwayne "Kef D" Davis's role. Davis, now 60, was one of 3 men in the Cadillac when Shakur and Knight were targeted in the drive-by shooting. Authorities accuse him of giving orders from the front passenger seat and providing the gun used in the killing. Lee, who testified that he was part of Davis's circle, said he wasn't in Las Vegas at the time of the shooting because he was in jail for the mall attack, but he recalled for the jury a conversation he had days later with his roommate at the time in South Los Angeles, DeAndre Smith, who was in the back seat of the Cadillac. Tupac's death rocked Biggie. Shakur, one of hip-hop's most prolific figures and a rising actor, fought for his life after the shooting. He was taken to the hospital, where he died 6 days later. Tinsley, who authored Wallace's 2022 biography, said one of the rapper's longtime friends told him Shocker's death hit Wallace in a very visceral and deep way. Biggie cried, Tinsley said. He was like, "I always thought we were going to have a chance to reconnect." He felt like if Tupac could be touched, if Tupac could die, he was scared, Tinsley said. 6 months later, on March 9, 1997, Wallace was also killed in a drive-by shooting, while leaving a music industry party in an upscale area of central Los Angeles. Dwayne Davis wasn't arrested for the murder of Tupac Shakur until September 29, but his alleged involvement in the shooting was hardly news. Davis, a South Side Crips member known as Kef D, was known to police as a suspect shortly after the killing, even if he'd never been charged. Since then, he's publicly admitted to being in the car that shot Tupac, not just in multiple interviews but also in his own memoir. Following the 2018 series Death Row Chronicles on BET, which featured some of Kef D's first public comments on the shooting. Las Vegas police reviewed the case and confirmed it remained open. Police later said, upon Kef D's arrest, that this and following interviews led to him being charged. It wasn't until 2018 that this case was reinvigorated, as additional information came to light related to this homicide, specifically Dwayne Davis's own admissions to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets. Fact Check hereby confirms that Kef D has linked P. Diddy in Shakur's murder case, but it's upon the L. Police Department to carry out investigations for proof purposes.